Hey, you know what? I'm not an AI. This is an actual YouTube channel. I'm actually a real person, and I actually know how to work on cars sometimes. Anyway, that notwithstanding, if you like my YouTube videos, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and make a comment. I'd love to hear your questions and comments about my videos. It's a great thing and it's a great place to get some conversation. And it's also a great way to boost this YouTube channel and make it something that's going to be mainstream instead of something that's going to be gone in a while. Okay, got the front of the engine going back together. Got our lower timing cover on. Got our engine mount bracket on. One important thing to know about this engine mount bracket on this particular vehicle, there's a bolt down here you can't see on camera, but there's not enough distance between this frame rail here and that bolt hole. You have to install this bracket with that bolt already in it, you know, kind of sticking through the hole. You try to put this bracket on and then feed that bolt through. There's actually not enough room there. So that's an important thing to note. But another thing I wanted to note is the guy that put this together last, his idiocy keeps coming through. That is our TV gasket sealer. That is an O-ring. Okay? You do not use gasket sealer with O-rings. And that's not going to do anything. Where the seal is coming from is that O-ring. This is just more crap in there that's just going to cause problems. You know, yet again, this was supposed to be a professional shop. I'm not a professional shop, quote unquote, and I have that O-ring in stock. Okay? That's just pathetic. Okay, finally down to one of the last big hurdles on this project. Tightening the crankshaft bolt back down. Now, if you look back in here, you can see we've got our holder tool, and we can see we've got our tightening socket. This holder tool is hooked to a breaker bar, and this breakover bar is down here where it's going to run right into this A-frame when the engine turns. So what I do is if I take my torque wrench here, and I pull on my torque wrench, see it goes up against that control arm, and the engine won't turn anymore, and I can start really romping on this wrench and turning it. Now another problem is reaching back there to that socket. So what I've done is I've taken a few extenders here and lengthened my wrench out, but then now your wrench flops around and your torque becomes inaccurate. Now this is not the best way of doing it, but it works. I've took a jack stand here and put underneath my wrench. So now I can push down on my wrench and torque it, and I'm good to go. And so I can do that with one person as opposed to multiple people screaming and straining. So there's a useful tech tip for you, but use this one wisely. Be very careful. Don't tip where you're going to get out of line with the jack stand and tip it over like that, you know, and just be very careful when you're tightening something down like this. Always position yourself well. Make sure you're not going to fall over and trip or fall back into any piece of equipment or, you know, break anything. You got to be very, very careful when you're doing something like this. But I thought that was kind of a useful tip to show how you can torque something as a single person. But every setup's different when you do this. It's very, very tricky, and just be very safe when you do this. One of the things I kind of like to do when I take a belt out of the sleeves like this, a lot of times they get folded up really tight, and maybe the company that makes the belt does that, maybe not. I think a lot of times parts stores will fold them up even tighter into the little sleeve just to save some space, and so you end up with a belt that's just kinked up like this, and it's really kind of, in my opinion, not super good for it. They are supposed to flex around, but they're supposed to be kind of warm when they start flexing around, you know, under engine heat and everything. This is a good way to crack the rubber and damage it. So what I always like to do is kind of let these belts just sit somewhere and relax back to their regular form before I install them. That's not super necessary. It's just one of those things that I like to do just to ensure that it's going to work the best it possibly can. Like I say, probably not necessary, but I really prefer to let these relax and get to the form that they should be. Okay, we're getting down to this part of this build where you get excited, and I hate to get excited over a boring old minivan, but the other mechanic, or I use the term mechanic used loosely, that timed this thing, didn't time it out right. He used a crappy water pump. I put good timing in it. I put a good water pump. I put good Dayco belts on here. Key point. And I put the writing out where you can see it. Even down there, you can barely see it. Well, actually, you can't see it on TV or on camera, but the writing's out down there. We got good belts, everything. We've almost got the power steering assembly reassembled. I need to put the reservoir back in and everything. We're changing the oil. We're putting good high-quality oil in it. We used a Wix filter down there, and we really drained the oil out. And one of the things I wanted to mention really quickly, it's been kind of a thrash this evening because I just want to see this thing run, and I think it's going to run really nice, which is one of the reasons why I want to see it run. I did the oil change with the oil cold. And this is a good time to bring up a subject of, I have seen at least one service manual that said in it, doing an oil change with the oil cold might do more harm than good. That is imbecilic. That's wrong. That's just completely incorrect. Any oil change is going to do you good as long as you're not filling the engine with crap oil. And yes, there are absolutely crap brands of oil out there. Sadly, I can't talk about it because I might get sued. But there are certain prominent brands out there, and if you do your research, you'll probably catch the bug on some of the brands that aren't necessarily what should be in the engine. But anyway, I filled it with a good quality oil and changed the oil because, you know, this is a brand new car to me, even though it's old. I've had this car for literally a couple of months now, and really just been kind of waiting to get to it to work on it. So change the oil, and we're going to do a bunch of short oil changes on this thing. And this is something I would recommend to anybody, and a lot of people would call me crazy for this, but when you get a car you don't know, just go ahead and put it on a short change of oil interval. You know, and I'm talking instead of like your 3,000 miles or your 5,000 miles, pull it down to 1,000 miles, or even this one, the first change on this one, I'm going to do it 200 miles. Just to wash the debris and whatever other oil was in here out so that I can get my good quality oil in there and then get this thing under control. I've seen so many times on these where you can change the oil multiple times, and you change the oil and immediately it just turns to where it's unclear and it's murky and it's nasty. And if you keep changing the oil, eventually you'll see it start staying clear. And that means you're washing the crap out of the engine. And that's a big deal. You know, if you got a van like this, and yeah, it's got a lot of miles on it, but I really would like this engine to survive a lot more miles. And one of the things, when I was cranking it over by hand, I could tell this engine had a lot of compression, which is great. I mean, if you turn them over by hand and they turn over super easy, that's not a good sign. You should have those bumps in there where you're hitting that compression. This engine's got good compression and everything, so I think it warrants a good few short oil changes to really get this motor cleaned out and get it ready to go like it needs to be. So we're doing an oil change now. We'll do another one real soon again. The other thing I wanted to address is I talked about there being an oil leak on the front of this motor. Couple of things. One, we discovered he had installed the oil dipstick with a bad O-ring on it, and he had used RTV gasket sealer to try and seal around that and make that work. That's never going to work. So that was probably an oil leak right there. The other thing is this power steering pump. I've cleaned it up, but this was leaking everywhere. This had grime all over it where you could tell it was leaking. I cleaned it up so that I can look and see in the future if it's still leaking. I'm going to probably address this situation because it's running down the whole front of the block, and it's also getting on that timing belt, which you do not want these dry timing belts to get oil on them. It's just bad for them. So that's our situation moving forward. I think we're in a really good position here. I need to get this power steering pump reservoir reinstalled and the hoses and everything worked out on that, and get it full of oil, and I should be able to start this thing up and give her a try. So it's looking pretty good right now, and we'll see how things go. got the build done. We've got the timing belt in. We've got the water pump in. I'm driving along here. The temperature gauge isn't even halfway up the scale. And I'm driving on a really hilly road, and it's bumpy. You can probably hear that. But I don't have to give this thing much gas. It goes right up over the hills, no problem. It runs great. It drives really good. Engine-wise, this thing's perfect now. It's absolutely running great. And we're buzzing along here a little bit fast because we just came down a hill. And yeah, 168,000 miles. And I had a good feeling when I was working on this engine. You know, when I had to crank it over by hand, I could feel that it had a lot of compression. So this engine's really healthy, and we're good to go now. So that's it for this episode of Great Outdoors Garage. You know, that last episode of Great Outdoors Garage really ended well, wasn't it? That was a real happy ending there. We had that van, it was running great. But here's the thing that you don't know. When we look at the work I did in that video and what I outlined in that video, yes, absolutely not a novice video, but it's possible for you to do it if you mind your P's and Q's. And the other thing is, if you took that to a shop, you're probably looking at somewhere in the range of $2,000 to $4,000. I really don't know because I don't go to shops, but I will tell you what I spent on parts of that was less than $250. So there you go, 1/10 of your repair cost if you're willing to put in the labor and the grunt.